Travel isn't just about destinations, it's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabocha, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place. Whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Remember during the Olympics, somebody wrote in very confused about Great Britain and Ireland and the United Kingdom and who was representing whom under which banner, etc. And they asked if we could please just explain the different concepts that fell under and outside of the concept of Team Great Britain as it was. And at the time we mentioned that you have Great Britain, which is the mainland containing Scotland and England and Wales. And then you have the United Kingdom, which is the term for the mainland plus Northern Ireland and the various island territories, such as the Hebrides and the Shetlands, etc. But that comment prompted our listener, Maria, to write to me with a very interesting observation about an exception, the Isle of Man. It turns out that while the Isle of Man is a crown dependency, which would be defended by Britain in a time of war, and its residents are British citizens, it is in fact a self-governing territory with a completely separate international identity. So while Manx athletes will compete at the Olympics under the banner of Team Great Britain, the island itself is not seen as part of the United Kingdom. It's not a member of the Commonwealth, although it does compete in the Commonwealth Games under its own flag, just to confuse matters further. It's got a very interesting sort of semi-independent status, or they would argue totally self-governing, but with very close ties to Britain. And we thought we would share a little bit with you because, of course, that email sent us all down a rabbit hole investigating further, and we learned some quite interesting things about what sounds like a fascinating place that many people couldn't even pinpoint on a map, I suspect. So we've decided that is where our armchair travel is taking us this afternoon, to find out what makes the Isle of Man special and why you should consider visiting it. And joining me on the line via Zoom is a South African who lives on the Isle of Man, a voice you might recognize because he has been a previous guest on The Money Show many times. Richard Mulholland, it's lovely to have you back on CapeTalk in a completely different segment. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Pippa. This is nice and a very, very different vibe.
Absolutely, I'm sure. I'd be terrified to be interviewed by Bruce or Stephen every second day, so thanks for joining us. Richard, how long ago did you move to the Isle of Man and what prompted your family to do so?
We moved in February of this year, so we've been here 6 months now. And it was a number of reasons, but actually the Isle of Man seems to be actively recruiting South Africans. They send delegations. And my sister went to an event. I mean, I don't know if you know, 10% of the island is South African.
10%? I knew it was a big figure. Crazy. I didn't know it was that high. Okay. Now, why are they actively recruiting us?
Well, I think South Africa has a very high quality export of human brain power and capital and a great work ethic. And I think that the island recognizes that. There was a lot of businesses like Derivco and Nedbank and Standard Bank who moved over and obviously wanted to bring over their staff. And I think that just started something there that got people, I guess, excited about the potential of South Africans. And my sister went to an event. We had a look at it. It checked a number of boxes of what I'm trying to do with my business to internationalize it. And I don't think we ever really thought it through. We just started looking into it, and here we are.
And 6 months down the line, you are one of the 10% South African population, which is, I think, 85,000 in total. It's still a small population on a relatively small island. Not so, Richard?
Absolutely. And it's quite incredible. Because of that, everybody plays cooperatively. In a very, very small island, it feels like a village. And so nobody wants to step out of line too much because everybody will know. And so what happens is you have this very, very charming location that functions like an economic capital with some really, really amazing businesses, but behaves like a seaside village. And it's a wonderful juxtaposition.
Now, I think we need to perhaps pause for a moment to help everybody locate the place we're talking about, because, Richard, I suspect there are a great many people who wouldn't be able to point to the Isle of Man on a map with any kind of certainty. We're talking about the northern part of the Irish Sea. Can you describe to us exactly where the island is located and how one gets there?
Yeah, so if you kind of drew a line from from Dublin across, the center of Ireland, and you just went a little bit north towards England and Wales, the island exists almost halfway between the two. So you get ferries from the likes of Liverpool and Dublin. And so it's just a bit north of both of those and between them.
So you'll have to fly either to Dublin or to the UK and then catch a ferry to get to the Isle of Man, which raises the question, what sort of visa does a South African need to be able to visit, Richard?
Yeah, so you can fly directly to the island. There's no problem. There's lots of flights that come in and out. You need essentially a visa for the UK. Visa for the UK will work fine. There is a free right to travel between the territories. So South Africans, and I would love to strongly encourage South Africans who are visiting the UK to really, really consider adding Isle of Man as one of their destinations, because it's a kind of country in a day, which is amazing.
Literally, I believe it takes about an hour to drive from the northern tip to the southern tip if you are just driving in a straight line and not stopping to do as one does in beautiful scenic island locations, drink in the scenery, enjoy the small town feel of hospitality. I mean, Richard, talk to us about what it's like culturally. It's very much sort of aligned with the UK, but as I said in the introduction, it's I know, fiercely proud of its independent status and self-governing status. How does that translate into the way they live? Is this a place that feels like an extension of Britain, or does it have its own unique character?
So it definitely has its own unique character, 100%. And I think that's also to do with the size of the place. But it feels English. It sounds English. A lot of the people would have what you would consider to be English accents. Some people sound Scouse, like Liverpudlian, and it's actually been quite hard for me so far to place where the Manx, who is Manx and who's English. But they are fierce. You learn within the first week. You make the mistake only once of referring to the mainland. And you'll be very, very quickly put in your place and told, no, this is the mainland. That is the left island, and the other one is the right island.
Oh, I love it.
But it's also way more cosmopolitan than you would imagine. In that it's a very mixed group. I was speaking at an event this morning, and I think in the event there was maybe only 10% of the people at the event were Manx. The rest of the people were from different countries.
I believe the ratio is that roughly 50% of the population were born on the Isle of Man, and another 40% of them are from somewhere else in the UK, and then the rest, as you said, overseas. And fascinating that you say that figure is now 10% South African. If I'm not mistaken, I think Mark Shuttleworth moved to the Isle of Man. As far as you know, is he still resident there?
Yes, but nobody really knows, because he doesn't. He keeps to himself. So he lives, funnily enough, in an area called Santon. That's not too far from where I am right now. And he kind of flies in and out, I would imagine. But apparently he's never really seen around town. I'd messaged him on LinkedIn when I arrived, but he was maybe one of the only people that didn't respond.
Really?
And I think he just wants to keep to himself, and more power to him.
Okay. So that's one of the famous people living there. You might be aware of some of the famous people who come from there. Among the most famous Manx residents or Manx birthed citizens of all time, the Bee Gees were born there, and so was the Olympic cyclist Sir Mark Cavendish, I know. So I know they're very proud of those personalities. Richard, let's talk a little bit about, I mentioned the sort of unique relationship it has in being its own place, not part of the United Kingdom, and yet still having King Charles technically as the head of state. But the parliament there, the Tynwald, I believe, is one of the oldest in the world, that was formed by Viking occupiers at some point. How much, you've only been there 6 months. I don't know how much exposure you've had to how things work and how governance runs on the island. What have you learned?
Yeah, so it does absolutely have its own government. I've learned that people complain about governments no matter where you are in the world, and I think it's all relative to what you have. But so far, we found it to be a highly functioning society that feels very well run, and the complaints all seem to be relative to anything else. There are MPs and parliaments, and things take a long time. But there's also a beautiful tradition. There's Tynwald Day, where there's a lot of old, ancient, almost Nordic traditions that come across when the government, I guess, I don't know what you call it, comes together. And it's quite wonderful. And the people are super proud, which is a very, very, I find it to be very catchy. Like I've become very, very proud to be here as well. And the government is one of the things we always talk about. Is one of the oldest running consecutive parliaments on the planet.
And I'll add something else to be very proud of. The Tynwald was, in fact, the first national legislative body anywhere in the world to give women the right to vote. It was in 1881, which was 8 years before New Zealand did so. New Zealand was the first fully independent country to give women the vote, but actually the Isle of Man was 8 years ahead of them in that regard. So that's a little bit of trivia, seeing as it's Women's Month. We are talking to Richard Mulholland, a South African now living on the Isle of Man, moved there in February this year with his family, and chatting to us about what it's like to visit and reasons to go and explore the Isle of Man. Now, of course, Richard, you can't talk about the Isle of Man without talking about the fact that it's one of the most famous tax havens in the world. Tell us a little bit more about the economy, and you've mentioned some very exciting cosmopolitan businesses. Tell us a little bit more about how the economy works there.
Yeah, so the island is very smart in that I think it tries to make its tax off external revenues. So because it does, it's a banking center, it's also a place for a lot of e-gaming and online gambling. So, foreigners will spend money with companies that are based on the island, and they are the companies that are taxed. For me, running my business here, there's no company tax. There is no inheritance tax. There's no capital gains tax. I've got a nominal income tax. And so it's a very nice place to run a business. But what they really attract, in fact, one of the biggest industries here is they want people to move their companies here who don't necessarily want to move here themselves. So they encourage entrepreneurs to open their foreign office of their businesses on the island, and then they can essentially be managed by local suppliers here.
Is that what you have done? Or, I mean, you've obviously moved as well yourself.
Well, no, so I moved. Yeah, so there are two main structures of businesses. One that is essentially designed for residents of the island,
right,
and one that is for non-residents. With us moving here, we obviously went with the resident one. It's super simple. And although most of my team is in South Africa and UK, me being here is enough for that to happen.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. So most of your team's still sitting here in South Africa, which is good to know. Now, let's talk about the visitor experience. Obviously, you've only been there 6 months, and I don't know how much time you've had to explore with the tourists' eyes on you. But Richard, what have been some of the most interesting sites and historic places that you've visited so far?
Well, so the first thing I think is worth talking about is an event. And, it was a big part of what made the island exciting for me, as I'm a motorcyclist.
The TT.
And the TT is just an incredible bucket list item and I wouldn't even just say motorcycle enthusiasts. It should be a bucket list item for almost anybody. It's an absolutely amazing experience. The island grows by about 50,000 people, and for a population of 84,000, that's significant. And the energy on the island is electric. It's just an absolutely incredible thing. In fact, this week we've got the Manx GP, which is kind of like a TT light, so to speak. And so we've got motorcyclists taking over the roads and racing around, and it's really exciting.
Okay, so motorsports enthusiasts not to be missed. I believe it's a place that's very steeped in sort of superstitions, and when I say that, with affection for the fact that they believe the fairies inhabit the Isle of Man, and there's certain traditions about when you have to greet the fairies on your way through certain places. Is that correct? I
greeted the fairies twice today already. And it's so funny. The island's very superstitious. So the idea is that if you don't greet the fairies, they will, you'll be unlucky the next time. But it's just such a fun, quirky part of it. And there is... I don't know how to explain it. There's something very special. There's a special energy in the island, and it comes from its folklore, and it's just all of these little things. But it's turned it into part of the charm and the fun. So my family and I, we never don't greet the fairies. So we drive past and we say, "Mora mai fairies." That's good morning, fairies, and good evening, and things when we drive past. And it's just part of the fun. And there's all these little quirky things, like if you're going for a walk near Peel Castle and you decide to walk along the promenade. Once you've started walking, you can't stop. You have to walk to the end of the promenade and kick the wall. And nobody won't kick the wall. And it's an absurd thing to watch. You see grown-ups walking along, and they'll just keep on walking, and they'll walk up to the wall, and they'll give it a little kick, and then they'll turn around and they'll walk back. And there's so many of these little quirky things that are just utterly charming and make it a wonderful place to be.
I believe that another highlight in early July is the World Tin Bath Championship. Richard, I don't know if that happened this year or if it's something that only happens every couple of years. Did you spy 100 odd people racing their tin baths along a watercourse at any part?
I did not. We definitely want to make that a highlight. I was traveling in South Africa at that time, doing some speaking work. So I did not, but it is a highlight, and we can't wait to see it. There's also on New Year's Day, everybody jumps into the freezing cold water for a swim, and there's a bunch of little traditions that we definitely want to take part in.
Sounds incredible. Let's talk about
do you know about the speed limits?
No, tell us about the speed limit.
Well, there is no speed limit.
Really?
So that's part of the reason why it's become such a center for street racing. Outside of the towns, the only rule is drive responsibly. But you can go as fast as your vehicle allows you. And so that's why a lot of motorcycle and supercar enthusiasts drive across to the island, because they can go through these mountain roads and for me on my motorbike, it was a really fun thing to do, is just to feel like I was on a racetrack, but ride through mountains.
And not have to look for a cop over one shoulder and a taxi over the other shoulder that was coming to plow into you.
And interestingly, it's because the entire island is the police. So there is a police force, but you rarely see them. But there's little to no crime because nobody tolerates it. Any crime there's name and shame. If you park badly, you'll be on a Facebook page. If you're rude to people, you'll be on a Facebook page. And it kind of just works. It sounds petty, but it's really not. And I live in a place where a bird, last week it made news that a bird was found with a hook in its cheek, a seagull, and the police wanted to find details on how something like this could have happened.
Sure. Okay. I mean, that must be an extraordinary adjustment mentally for a South African to make, Richard, to come from a place where you are continually aware of security and looking over your shoulder and did we lock the doors and have we set the beams on the alarm, etc., to suddenly be in a place where those concerns all but evaporate. Did you almost have to sort of spend some time deprogramming yourselves to adjust to living like that?
Absolutely. And one of the funny things was I ordered something from Amazon and it delivered to my house. It was a microphone. And, you quite quickly stop locking the door. And when I got home, I couldn't see my Amazon parcel. And I thought, oh, no, what's happened? Has somebody stolen it? But actually what had happened is the postman just opened the house door, walked in and put it down on her table and walked away again. And it just blew me away that's what happens here.
Oh, my gosh.
And so it is an adjustment. But I want to be very clear that it's not better than South Africa. It's just different. There are pros and cons, obviously. You're living in a small place and there's a beautiful, wonderful energy around South Africa. And I'm not for a single second suggesting that this is a better place or an upgrade even. It's just a very different place that I happen to love living in.
I mean, it's just fascinating hearing the differences in the way we live is what makes travel so exciting and so enriching to all of us. So it's absolutely fascinating listening to this description, particularly from the perspective of somebody who's actually living there, not just visiting. Before we let you go, Richard, I have to ask about the food. I mean, an island in the middle of the Irish Sea, one assumes that seafood is going to be a big factor on the menu, but I believe that there is sort of a chips, cheese and gravy and a Manx version of the Canadian poutine, which is one of the popular dishes. Have you tried it yet?
Well, so unfortunately not, because I'm a vegan.
Okay.
But that is absolutely a thing. And also chips, cheese and beans. So baked beans, cheddar cheese on top of your chips.
Oy.
There's incredible chippies around the place. We actually drive down to one that we love in a little town called Port Erin and sit and go to the chippy and get your... in our case, we'll get like a veggie sausage and chips and stuff. Yeah. But it's also there's quite a big foodie culture on the island. Okay. And there's some incredible restaurants. So anything you would expect to find from, there just may not be as many choices, but there are every form of cuisine you can imagine. In fact, the one guy was quite upset. One of the very wealthy people who live on the island who was upset that there wasn't a Japanese food. You see, the island has a very, very wealthy. Yeah, there's a lot of very wealthy people. So he flew to Japan, found the best chef he could find, and moved him here to start a restaurant.
Oh my goodness!
And that's the kind of thing that people do.
Okay. Jackie writing in on the WhatsApp line to say her son also left South Africa to go and work on the Isle of Man for a year, working in the wine industry, and how much he enjoyed the experience of the TT motorbike race with people coming from all over the world to enjoy the biking culture here. So, Jackie, thanks. I hope he enjoyed the stay as much as Richard seems to be enjoying his. Final question then, Richard, for a South African who's never explored the Isle of Man. I think you have whet everybody's appetite with this wonderful description of what life is like there. Is there a particular time of year? I mean, I'm assuming that the weather conditions, etc., are going to be very much like your British and Irish visiting. You don't really want to be there in the middle of a slushy grey winter, but has there been a particular season so far that you would say is the best time to come?
Yeah, so I don't mind the cold at all, but I would imagine I've got visitors coming over this week, and I'm really hoping that it's just so, we get some nice weather. This time of the year feels like a perfect time to come. Or the 3 months from July, August, September, earlier the summer months, the spring to summer months feel amazing. As soon as there's a bit of blue sky, it doesn't even matter if it's cold. You put on a hoodie and the island just shows off. It feels inconceivable to me that people will not arrive here. And as soon as they're driving, through the countryside and the sun comes out, they will fall in love with this place. They'll leave a part of their heart here. And you can get those days all year round, but you got a better chance of getting them, when you come in the summer months. And one last little thing that I love, and I actually did a video about this, if you don't mind. Yeah. It's just a funny quirk is that I bought myself one of those little electric bikes to cycle to work. I thought that would be fun. And there's an amazing thing here is that cyclists, no car will ever overtake you in your lane. So if you're driving on a lane in a little country road, you might have a queue of 20 cars because they will not pass you until there's a clear way for them to pass you completely in the other lane. So it's a really safe place for pedestrians walking on the road and for cyclists, in that everybody, the hierarchy is that you're kind of at the top of the food chain. And it's one of those little quirks where at first I was getting impatient seeing cyclists everywhere. And now you just kind of chill out, you slow down. The line they use here is "tra de l'heure," time enough. There's time enough, you're not in a rush. And you just wait until you find a gap and you go past and everybody smiles. It's incredible.
Well, Richard, thank you. You've done such a wonderful job of painting a portrait for us of a very, very special place. And I guess we must wish you more of those beautiful sunny summer's days and try de l'heure to enjoy them. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Pippa.
Richard Mulholland chatting to us there via Zoom from the Isle of Man.
Travel isn't just about destinations. It's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabotja, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place, whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.